Need to move you around. Here you go. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the last class. I am going to wrap us up with the last part of the last chapter. So this was feminism targeting feminine enemies in our culture. And here we're focusing more on social psychology and focusing on community psychology. And just to remind you, we defined a norm as informal social regularities that individuals feel obligated to follow because of an internalized sense of duty, because of fear of externalized non-legal sanctions, or both. And down here are some examples of some of the messaging that Tri-Delta used in their Fat Talk Free Week, just to give you a flavor for what some of that stuff looks like. Okay, and so here we're kind of thinking about how to take the field of advertising, social psychology, community psychology, and how to figure out how to send out messages that would affect more individuals and communities, ideally, when it comes to ending fat talk. And so one of the most famous and successful campaigns that has ever targeted women's behavior was the Virginia Slims campaign. And unfortunately, it was very powerful advertising. It hooked onto the feminist movement that was happening at that time. So it seemed like a good thing. And they were trying to empower women and allow women to enjoy cigarettes like men had been allowed to enjoy cigarettes. But then they were also very clever in snapping onto women's desire to be lean, which was the norm at the time that these campaigns launched. And so I just want to give you a little bit of a flavor for some of these ads. And this one over here, it shows them back in the olden days playing tennis in those really what seems like hot dresses that would prevent you from moving around and playing tennis well. And then look at her now, she's all spry and she's just all athletic, and she's smoking and playing tennis, which goes really great together. Over here, we've got one where it was talking about how, remember the days when a woman was allowed out of the house once a day to put the laundry up and dry the laundry, and then now it's showing her, I don't know, she's about ready to go out to a party or something like that. And so they did a lot of that sort of this old-timey look, and then look at how you can look now sophisticated, smoking, staying lean. You've come a long way, baby. They even rolled in African-American women into their campaigns. So really trying to get women to think, oh, this is a really cool, sophisticated thing that I can do, enjoy cigarettes and buy Virginia Slims and keep myself slim, okay? So from an advertising perspective, it was brilliant. And it was very effective. Okay. Now, I'm not saying I endorse it by any means, because it got a lot of women smoking and created a lot of health issues for women. But wouldn't it be interesting if we could tap into these types of ideas, advertising, social psych, community psych, and figure out how to message more effectively behavior change? Okay, so I'm going to exit this here in a second. I want to talk about Dr. Gene Kilbourne. She has a wonderful website if y'all want to know more about her. I still remember watching her original Killing Me Softly many, many moons ago when I was taking women's studies classes in my undergrad. And after I watched her first Killing Me Softly, I could never see the world the same again, particularly every time I would see an advertisement. And there have been times where I have, and I know other individuals who have done the same thing, where they've seen a product advertised in a way that feels offensive, either write to the company and complain about the offensiveness or of the ad, and or just stop purchasing that product if that was a product that you purchased. Okay. And I like Dr. Kilbourne's point, because she's saying this isn't just about selling products for companies. It is also about establishing norms in our culture. Okay. So the messaging goes beyond the buy the product piece. And then I'll show you Dove's Beauty Evolution, where they were trying to do a little bit better with that. So let me escape this here. I tried to, you all were so clever this semester, how you embedded your media, your videos within your PowerPoints. I learned thought I learned how to do that, and then none of them work today. So I've got them outside. Okay, so let's do Gene Kilbourne's. This is just the trailer for her Killing Me Softly, and she's on number 4. So she's been doing this research and putting together these presentations for a long, long time.
Sometimes people say to me, "You've been talking about this for 40 years. Have things gotten any better?" And actually, I have to say, really, they've gotten worse. Ads sell more than products. They sell values, they sell images, they sell concepts of love and sexuality, of success, and perhaps most important, of normalcy.
Oops, sorry.
To a great extent, they tell us who we are and who we should be. Well, what does advertising tell us about women? It tells us, as it always has, that what's most important is how we look. So the first thing the advertisers do is surround us with the image of ideal female beauty. Women learn from a very early age that we must spend enormous amounts of time, energy, and above all, money, striving to achieve this look and feeling ashamed and guilty when we fail. And failure is inevitable because the ideal is based on absolute flawlessness. She never has any lines or wrinkles. She certainly has no scars or blemishes. Indeed, she has no pores. And the most important aspect of this flawlessness is that it cannot be achieved. No one looks like this, including her. And this is the truth.
You're not seeing it?
No.
Okay. Then let's do it over. Ah. Could you hear it? Oh, okay. You got to see it. This is the visual is very powerful here.
Sometimes people say to me, "You've been talking about this for 40 years. Have things gotten any better?" And actually, I have to say, really, they've gotten worse. Ads sell more than products. They sell values, they sell images, they sell concepts of love and sexuality, of success, and perhaps most important, of normalcy. To a great extent, they tell us who we are and who we should be. Well, what does advertising tell us about women? It tells us, as it always has, that what's most important is how we look. So the first thing the advertisers do is surround us with the image of ideal female beauty. Women learn from a very early age that we must spend enormous amounts of time, energy, and above all, money, striving to achieve this look and feeling ashamed and guilty when we fail. And failure is inevitable because the ideal is based on absolute flawlessness. She never has any lines or wrinkles. She certainly has no scars or blemishes. Indeed, she has no pores. And the most important aspect of this flawlessness is that it cannot be achieved. No one looks like this, including her. And this is the truth. No one looks like this. The supermodel Cindy Crawford once said, "I wish I looked like Cindy Crawford." She doesn't, she couldn't, because this is a look that's been created for years through airbrushing and cosmetics, but these days it's done through the magic of computer retouching. Keira Knightley is given a bigger bust. Jessica Alba is made smaller. Kelly Clarkson. Well, this is interesting. It says slim down your way, but she in fact slimmed down the Photoshop way. You almost never see a photograph of a woman considered beautiful that hasn't been Photoshopped. We all grow up in a culture in which women's bodies are constantly turned into things, into objects. Here she's become the bottle of Michelob. In this ad, she becomes part of a video game. And this is everywhere in all kinds of advertising. Women's bodies turned into things, into objects. Now, of course, this affects female self-esteem. It also does something even more insidious. It creates a climate in which there's widespread violence against women. I'm not at all saying that an ad like this directly causes violence. It's not that simple. But turning a human being into a thing is almost always the first step toward justifying violence against that person. We see this with racism, we see it with homophobia, we see it with terrorism. It's always the same process. The person is dehumanized and violence then becomes inevitable. And that step is already and constantly taken with women. Women's bodies are dismembered in ads, hacked apart. Just one part of the body is focused upon, which of course is the most dehumanizing thing you could do to someone. Everywhere we look, women's bodies turned into things and often just parts of things. And girls are getting the message these days so young that they need to be impossibly beautiful, hot, sexy, extremely thin, and they also get the message that they're going to fail, that there's no way to really achieve it. Girls tend to feel fine about themselves when they're 8, 9, 10 years old, but they hit adolescence and they hit a wall. And certainly part of this wall is this terrible emphasis on physical perfection. So no wonder we have an epidemic of eating disorders in our country and increasingly throughout the world. I've been talking about this for a very long time, and I keep thinking that the models can't get any thinner, but they do. They get thinner and thinner and thinner. This is Anna Carolina Reston, who died a year ago of anorexia, weighing 88 pounds. And at the time, she was still modeling. So the models literally cannot get any thinner. So Photoshop is brought to the rescue. There are exceptions, however. Kate Winslet has been outspoken about her refusal to allow Hollywood to dictate her weight. When British GQ magazine published this photograph of Winslet, which was digitally enhanced to make her look dramatically thinner, she issued a statement that the alterations were made without her consent. And she said, "I don't look like that, and more importantly, I don't desire to look like that. I can tell you that they've reduced the size of my legs by about a third." Bless her heart. So what can we do about all of this? Well, the first step is to become aware, to pay attention, and to recognize that this affects all of us. These are public health problems that I'm talking about. The obsession with thinness is a public health problem. The tyranny of the ideal image of beauty, violence against women. These are all public health problems that affect us all. And public health problems can only be solved by changing the environment.
Okay. Yeah. So you can tell the images were important, not just the audio. So thoughts or reactions to that? I'm having me a day here. Okay. I think it's not going to just like come back and talk to us. Okay. Thoughts, reactions. Had you paid attention to any of those aspects before? Like you've heard me complain about the body parts. Like that's a pet peeve for me of chopping women into body parts. Had you ever seen the body as things, though, objectifying them as things? Okay. Other thoughts?
I know I personally had seen, it was either this video or a video very similar to this in my constructs of gender class last year before. And I didn't really, I guess I never really put together the idea that women's bodies are objectified in that way, like literally objectified, like put on objects or made to be objects. I think it's something that I just never really thought about because I grew up with it, I suppose.
And I think that's a good point, Vivian, that we get exposed to this so often that we feel like it's normal, that, you know, not until you kind of think through it and what they're really doing, can you see the offensive piece to it. You know, it just seems like, well, this is the world and this is how women are displayed frequently to sell product. And then a lot of sexualized nature to it also, right? And one of my other pet peeves that I think you read about was taking really younger women, so like fresh teenagers, and then making them up to look like adult sexy women. And real adult women can never achieve that. Let me be a 14-year-old making myself up trying to look like a real adult, sexy adult kind of thing. So that's another trick that they use. And then the Photoshop piece, I'm glad that, like Kate Winslet, I'm glad that some of these celebrities are pushing back on that. Wouldn't that be weird if somebody took a picture of you because you're somehow out there and, as an actor or a comedian or a model or something, and then they put you up there and it's like not at all you? Wouldn't that just be really freaky? So it's no wonder that, and I don't do this, but I know younger people do this, that so many younger people are into the filters. So Instagram or, Facebook, whatever, are using the filters to kind of do that. Like what's been done to these celebrities, people can kind of do it a bit to themselves to enhance in some way. And then now we've got the Photoshop piece, and I'm going to show you that here in a second, but I want to tell you a quick story. This is a friend of a friend. I've never met this gentleman. But one of my good friends, her male friend, is a graphic designer and does Photoshop and that kind of stuff. And for years, he worked for Playboy magazine. And so his full-time job was altering women after they had posed for the magazine, whether they were, clothed in lingerie or totally nude. He would Photoshop and alter them according to standards that he was given. Okay. So like enhancing their bust size or making their waist smaller, that kind of thing, making their wrists longer, stuff like that. Anyways, according to my friend, he said that he could not date women. And he was very interested in finding a woman to have a long-term relationship with, because whenever he would date women and he would look at them or he would see them in bed, all he could do in his head was alter them. Yes, Sarah's cringing. And so, yeah. But he was smart enough to eventually know that he had to quit that job or this would ever be ingrained in him. Like he would only see women as objects to be fixed and altered, as opposed to a woman with whom he could be a partner with. Okay. Now I want to talk about Dove Beauty. We've talked a little bit about that study where they had the women look at the advertisements, and most of the women were like, oh, this is really forward thinking. This is really progressive. I'm glad Dove's doing this. But then they asked the question in the focus groups, is this feminist? And when they asked it that way, a lot of the women started changing their mind about it, right? They were kind of like, yeah, this is progressive, but yeah, it's feminist. And then my favorite quote in there was like, what's so great about larger women wanting to get clean? Just like any woman would like to get clean. So in a survey that they did for Dove, they surveyed a bunch of women. They asked them about their qualities. And I've seen this in an interview of the woman who ran the survey. She comes back and she says, rarely did women say that they were beautiful or that they were gorgeous. And so Dove, from an advertising standpoint, tried to hook onto that and show more normal women looking beautiful so that us normal women out there could relate to them and go, finally, women that I can relate to, let me buy this product because I want to be, sassy and clean and firm skin and all that kind of stuff like these women. But I still remember in watching the lead researcher who led the survey thinking, is that the most important thing we're supposed to be thinking about ourselves, right? That we're gorgeous, we're beautiful, or that we are kind, or that we are effective, or that we are smart, or we're trying to change the world, or whatever, good moms, whatever, right? So then I want to show you what this is an award-winning clip. So let me go ahead and share my screen and show you the Dove clip and see what you think. What they've done here is they've taken a normal woman, a woman who's not a model, although she's probably paid for this, so she's probably modeling at this point in time. And they're showing you all the stuff that they do to her for hair and makeup, and then the photoshopping. And then this gives you an idea. It's kind of like the Cindy Crawford. I wish I woke up and looked like Cindy Crawford kind of thing. Okay, so let me. You see it? Okay, thoughts on that? Did that seem progressive? At least progressive relative to the Gene Kilbourne ads? Or maybe I should ask, progressive in what way, but why not all the way there?
It's progressive by exposing the Photoshop and not making it like normal, but less progressive and still defining people by their beauty.
Do others agree? Yeah, so they are kind of exposing what's done. And keep in mind, from an advertising standpoint, that was an award-winning ad that Dove produced. Any other thoughts on this? And then remember, I think I showed it or somebody else showed it, the women in the white underwear, and they had women of different color. Do y'all remember that? The thing that this is just where my head goes sometimes, that disturbed me more about that is how they were all touching each other. It was like, girls just don't like hang out in their underwear and get all touchy feely with one another, even if they're great friends. That's just not how women tend to roll. And then there are other things that bug me. Okay, so let's see. So let's talk a little bit about some of the community-based interventions, and some of you have already talked about this a bit. We spoke about Operation Beautiful the other day, which was with the sticky notes on the mirrors and that type of thing. And again, anecdotally, Caitlin Boyle, who put that together, talked about how frequently individuals, would send her testimonials and say like how uplifting that was. But again, there's no scientific evidence that that's effective. And then we talked about the other day that affirmations tend to work better in people who already have high self-esteem. And so if you're trying to capture women who feel poorly about themselves and help them feel better, this type of intervention, we know from other research, not studying Operation Beautiful, tends not to work. Okay. And for some individuals, it could even backfire. Again, that message of, oh, this is what I should be caring about. I should be caring about my appearance more, kind of thing, when maybe I'm not feeling so good about that. We've talked about a little bit about Tri-Delta's Fat Talk Free Week. And one study found where they pre-tested women on their levels of fat talk and they post-tested them after Fat Talk Free Week. And the women were reporting that they were fat talking less. But again, from a scientific standpoint, one question that we couldn't answer in that study was that a demand characteristic? Were the women saying, this is what I'm supposed to say? Okay. I remember when I participated in the Body Project, when they come in and you have to buy the training, and the counseling center paid for the training for ASU, and they brought them in, and we ran groups, and we had faculty members and counseling center staff members. We all had to complete pre and post test surveys, and I still remember a bunch of the students on my research team at the time attended the Body Project. And again, like I said, it was very powerful. But we all remember discussing after we got emailed the post tests. So after the groups had run, and I don't know if Peyton, if you remember doing any surveys, if you did surveys or they weren't studying it at the time. But we were just all talking in research team about, yeah, as you're filling out the survey, you've got this little voice in the back of your head. What am I supposed to say? Right? Like, of course you're supposed to respond honestly, but there was a little bit of that. Am I supposed to, say that every little thing that I used to worry about is all gone? Or am I supposed to be honest, if that makes some sense? And that's also always an issue in intervention research. Okay. And then I do just want to emphasize that the Body Project has been studied very, very thoroughly, like multiple different universities with women. There's been some research where they've studied it with men, and there's just a lot of scientific evidence that this dissonance-based program is effective. Thoughts, comments here? Oh, here's the women in their underwear. Yeah. Yeah, like she's laying her head on the other woman's bust. Does that not like strike some people as like intrusive? Okay. Okay, some celebrities who have spoken out. I am so pleased whenever I hear any of this. And we've been kind of talking about some of these women all throughout this semester. Emma Watson, formerly known as Hermione. I loved her quote, feminism is about choice. Feminism is not a stick with which to beat other women with. It's about freedom. It's about liberation. It's about equality. Amy Schumer's been outspoken. Melissa McCarthy, and she has her clothing line. Kelly Clarkson, and she has her clothing line. And then the Cindy Crawford saying, I wish I looked like Cindy Crawford. You all probably don't remember her. She was more, when I was like a teenager and a young adult, she was more of a big time model at that time. There's even a stand-up comic. I saw her in a show recently. It took me forever. It was like a Netflix show. It took me forever to place this woman as a comic, but she used to do a skit because her face looked like Cindy Crawford. And she used to, in her stand-up, she would say, I'm the Cindy Crawford that you can get, and would make a kind of play on that and make a joke on that. So again, she was quite popular years ago. Okay. And you all know I'm a fan of Reese. So let me stop this share. And I want to show you her speaking about how she has been directed in movies. And then now that she's doing her own directing, and she's quite an outspoken feminist, and she's done a show, I think it's on Netflix, I can't remember if it's Netflix or Hulu, where she interviews famous women. Like the first interview she does is Dolly Parton. And then she did, I think Glennon Doyle, some other top-notch women. Okay, so let me find Reese. Yes, she is.
What do we do now?
Okay, so she is complaining about this line that she has been asked to read in a lot of these movies, particularly the romantic comedies, where she is the counterpart of a male, you know, in a dating relationship or something like that. And she's complaining about this line.
What do we do now? Seriously, I'm not kidding. Go back and watch any movie and you will see this line over and over again. You're going to see it now.
You can't see the video.
See it? Okay.
She goes, Mom, I heard that line.
Okay, I knew something was wrong. I caught that one earlier because I couldn't see you. Okay, thank you. All right, I'll rewind it because I want you to. We're good? Okay.
What do we do now? Seriously, I'm not kidding. Go back and watch any movie and you will see this line over and over again. You're going to see it now. I'm telling you. My daughter watched a movie last weekend. She goes, Mom, I heard that line. And I love to ask questions, but it's my most hated question. And I dread reading scripts that have no women involved in their creation, because inevitably I get to that part where the girl turns to the guy and she goes, what do we do now? Now, do you know any woman in any crisis situation who has any woman in any crisis who has absolutely no idea what to do? I mean, don't they tell women, they tell people in crisis, little children, that if you're in trouble, talk to a woman. It's ridiculous that a woman wouldn't know what to do. So anyway, after I went to visit these studios, I started telling people about this current pipeline and that there was barely any female leads in films and the industry was in crisis, and people were aghast. They said, that's horrible, they said. And then they changed the subject and move on to their dinner and move on with their lives. But I could not change the subject. I couldn't turn to some man and say, what do we do now? This is my life. Okay, I've made movies all my life for 25 years, since I was 14 years old. It was time to turn to myself and say, what are we going to do now? Okay, Reese, what are we going to do now? And the answer is really clear. My mother, who's here tonight, very strong, smart Southern woman, said to me, if you want something done, honey, do it yourself. So I started my own production company, Pacific Standard Films, with the mission to tell stories about women. And I was nervous, y'all. I was spending my own money, which everyone in the movie business always tells you, don't spend your own money on anything. I was warned that on the crazy chance that Pacific Standard would acquire any good scripts, we would never make it past our first few years of business because there just wasn't a market for buying female-driven material. But like Ed Woods, I do not like to be underestimated. I am a very avid reader. In fact, I'm a complete book nerd. And so is my producing partner. So we just tore through tons of manuscripts and read so many things before they were published, but we could only find really 2 pieces of material that we thought were great. And we optioned them with our money and we prayed that they would work. Both were strong, complicated, fascinating women at the center, and both were written by women. And lo and behold, both books hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list in July of 2012. One was called Gone Girl, and the second was called Wild. So we made those 2 films last year, and those 2 films grossed over $500 million worldwide. And we got 3 nominations for Academy Awards for women in acting performances. So that was year 1. And against the odds, Pacific Standard has had a year 2 and a year 3. We've got 5 more best-selling books. Next year, we're going to make 2 of those, Big Little Lies and Luckiest Girl Alive, into films. We have over 25 films in development and 3 television shows, and they all have female leads of different ages and different races and different jobs. Some are astronauts, some are soldiers, some are scientists. One is even a Supreme Court justice. And they're not just good or bad. They're bold and haunted and dangerous and triumphant, like the real women that we meet every single day of our lives. But our company isn't just thriving because it feels like a good thing to do. It's thriving because female-driven films work. This year alone, Trainwreck with Amy Schumer, Melissa McCarthy's Spy, Pitch Perfect 2, Cinderella, the Hunger Games franchise that has made over $2.2 billion worldwide. Films with women at the center are not a public service project. They are a big-time, bottom-line enhancing, money-making commodity. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we are in a cultural crisis. In every field and every industry, women are underrepresented and underpaid in leadership positions. And the reason we're all talking about it tonight, under 5% of CEOs of Fortune 500 companies are women. Only 19% of Congress is women. No wonder we don't have the health care we deserve, or paid family leave, or public access to early childhood education. And that really worries me. How can we expect legislation with our rights and our needs being preserved if we don't have equal representation? So here's my hope. If you're in politics, the media, the tech industry, working as an entrepreneur or a teacher or a construction worker or a caregiver, you know the problems we are all facing. And I urge each one of you to ask yourselves, what do we do now? That's a big question. What is it in your life that you think you cannot accomplish? Or what is it that people have said that you cannot do? Wouldn't it feel really good to prove them all wrong? Because I believe ambition is not a dirty word. It's just believing in yourself and your abilities. Imagine this. What would happen if we were all brave enough to believe in our own ability, to be a little bit more ambitious? I think the world would change. Thank you.
Thoughts, comments, reactions? She spoke a lot about money, which for some people is kind of like, yeah, makes sense. And for some people is a turnoff. But what else was she promoting? What did you think of her comment of liking the word ambitious? Because I think that's a masculine verb. Well, it's an adverb, right? Or adjective. Is ambitious a bad word for women? Good. I'm glad some of you feel that way. I read a wonderful quote from Martin Luther King this past weekend in a book that I'm reading, and it was his definition of power. And I know when I went and trained in this women's group at the American Psychological Association for mid-career women, on the first day in the first presentation of the workshop leader, they said, what do you all feel about the word power? Okay. And the women in the audience had lots of conflictual feelings about the word power. And a lot of women associated it with men. They associated it with, we're not supposed to want power or have power. But this is why the Martin Luther King quote resonated with me. He said, power is advocating for purpose and effectively creating change. So advocating for purpose and effectively making for change. And if you think about the person who made that quote, we're talking about an African-American leader, right, who was assassinated. And if anybody didn't like get born into this world with what we would consider to be natural power over people, he certainly led a movement that helped individuals rise up and try to affect change. So thoughts, comments on that? Okay. My last questions to you are the questions at the end of, let me share screen again. This is my last slide. I don't have a whole lot that I want to go over today, but kind of the questions I asked at the end of the chapter and the end of the book. How can women rise to their own personal empowerment, which when they are locked into a habitual pattern of fat talk, which brings them down, as well as all kinds of other forces in our culture that have a way of bringing women down? And how can we achieve gender equality in a society that tolerates public body snarking of female celebrities and other women on, that's supposed to be on, not social media? So thoughts to close out the semester on this. Let me get you all in. Let me stop my share, get you in full gallery. There you are. I've written some reflection papers. You all have done such a great job with that. It's been really nice getting to know you kind of individually from reading those. How many of you have been doing kind of personal reflection, even academic kind of scientific thinking reflection? Many of you have been kind of reflecting on families, friends, communities. And that's one of the things that I wanted to try to do in the book. My when I was in graduate school, my community psychology, he also taught me health psych, Dr. Richard Winnett, was fantastic professor and fantastic instructor. And the thing that bugged him when he would hear a public service announcement is they would tell you something about themselves, like a nonprofit agency, like the American Diabetes Association. So a commercial would come on the radio and be like, American Diabetes Association, we've been doing research, to try to cure type 1, type 2 diabetes for blah, 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 many years. American Diabetes Association, we are there to advocate for patients who get diagnosed with diabetes, that kind of stuff. And then then the public service announcement would end. And my professor, Dr. Winnett, would go, what do you want us to do? Do you want us to donate to your organization? Do you want us to go exercise so we don't get type 2? Like, what do you want us to do? And then I was trained very behaviorally Like if you're going to send out a message, certainly advertisers, what they want you to do is they want you to hear the message and then buy their product, right? But wouldn't it make sense? And in advertising, people study the three. Do we have anybody in advertising in here? I don't think we do. Have y'all heard of the 3 Ps? You got your product, your price, and your placement. Well, I was trained in community psychology, and I've not really done this in my research, but that's why I tried to write about it a bit, is called social marketing. And in social marketing, you're not trying to get people to buy a product. In social marketing, you're trying to affect cultural change, or you're trying to change behavior for people. And so the American Diabetes public service announcement would be, American Diabetes, we've been doing this great stuff. If you would like to donate, here's the link. And please exercise and eat healthfully and don't smoke and do all those things to prevent, getting type 1 diabetes or type 2 diabetes, that type of thing. So a little bit more of that. What are we supposed to do? Did you get a little bit of that feel of that, of at least what some people are doing, trying to do scientifically, what some people are trying to do using their celebrity? Okay. Well, hopefully many of you kind of like after watching the Gene Kilbourne Killing Me Softly, and keep in mind, go surf. She's got a bunch of stuff out there. She's got a lot more out there than we've covered in this class. But a lot of times once you see that kind of stuff, you can't stop seeing it. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's kind of waking up and being more enlightened and being able to kind of see the world and get mad at things that we should get mad at. Any other thoughts, comments before we close out today? Any questions about final exam? I did double check on the final exam schedule because I was like, why are we so late? And that's exactly when they've got us placed next Thursday, 11 o'clock. So I think we're one of the last exams in the schedule. Yeah. Each of you will be posed 2 questions. The final exam is worth 25 points. So each question is about 12.5 points-ish. And what I will do is I will go in order that you show up on my screen, which I don't think you can control, and I've never been able to control. And I'll kind of ask them that way and just sort of rotate around the group. Any other questions about that? Okay, Vivian's saying, couple minutes. Does that sound good? Yeah, we don't need any soliloquies or anything like that, but yeah, just enough, kind of like if you were in conversation and somebody asked you, again, like in consultation, somebody asked you that question, and you would be able to respond. You'd be able to respond in kind, and then if that person had any follow-up questions about any other details, and if I have that on Thursday, I might follow up the question with a little bit more of a question, but I'm not going to grill anybody. Any other questions? Anyone? All right, well, thanks for coming to see all of us Tuesday, Thursday in the middle of the day this semester. It's been nice actually seeing real faces. Okay, come and see me during my office hours or email me if you've got any questions as you get prepared for the final exam. Good to see everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.